Stillwater's Morning Scramble, glad to have you here, and glad to have Kevin Fowler in, the president of Simmons Bank. Good to see you.
Good morning, all.
Busy time, huh?
Busy time. I was just thinking, I was in a week ago Friday, and in the back of my mind, we were thinking about making the decision about closing the lobby, and that was, 8 days ago? Oh, 10 days ago, something along those lines. And wow, we made that decision a week ago Friday. And I'd never thought, and when we turned the calendar to March 2020, that we'd be talking about closing our lobbies. That was such a difficult decision. I mean, we kind of bankers want to be accessible, and that's just not a good optic to have your lobbies closed. But we wrestled with that. Our team did, and made that call. It was, but I was just thinking, just over the weekend and by Monday, it was clearly the right thing to do. It was, so things are moving that fast where on a Friday you're making decisions because you need to let personnel know. You need to make sure the marquee says the lobbies are closed, and what that all means and how we communicate that to market. And you're nervous about it, but within 48 hours you're clear it was the responsible thing to do. So there on the corner of 6th and Main was, bank lobbies closed. But it's turned out to be really there's always blessings in disguise, and we had a great plan put together to reach out. Just think about safety deposit box. People want to get to their safety deposit box. So there's 1,000 of those in the bank. You don't know there's that many, that number. So our team makes calls to all those people, all of our clients that have safety deposit boxes, and just reaching out to them and letting them know how they get in their safety deposit box, and then that trickles down to new accounts or CDs that are maturing, and we do a lot of that, but it was just an all-in focus to reach out to our clients and let them know what was going on, and really a terrific experience in the end. Again, I can't wait to open the lobbies back up for that day to happen, and it's soon in my mind. But there was that blessing that our team really bonded together. I know a lot of other bank teams did too, because it turned out to be the right thing to do. About all banks have followed that lead.
This is the last day of March, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. Can you believe how long March has lasted?
Isn't it nuts?
I mean, our world has. Although we knew about the coronavirus, we'd heard about it.
Did we? We did.
And in February, and they were starting, and we
Yeah.
knew that stuff was coming here because it was just going to. But since then, in the last 4 weeks, I guess, really, our lives have changed. And you mentioned a week and a half ago, you were on that Friday.
Yep.
And you mentioned. Maybe you hinted at this a little bit
I
because
did.
you said, there could be some changes coming up down the road, but I could tell those were going to be
Painful.
hard. Yeah,
right. Well, that barometer for me was Taste of Stillwater on March 10th, and it was not a joke at that point, the coronavirus, but it was we weren't bought into it at that point as a community. But wow. I didn't know how the community was going to react to the bank lobbies closed, but it sure has been impressive. We're an educated community, and we understand the need and the safety for certainly our clients, but also for our team members as well is very important. Right now, we have about half of our team working remotely. We're able to do that, not the customer facing, if you will, but a lot of our accounting team or fraud detection team or the folks that can work, credit analysts, that type of thing, are working remotely. So,
Kevin, how many employees? Do you know the exact number that you have here in Stillwater?
It's roughly 80 here in Stillwater. Yes. So.
And so I would imagine at night when you lay down, you're not only worried about your customers, but that's your responsibility too.
Yeah,
right?
and I don't supervise many of them, but it's still here in the Stillwater family,
Absolutely.
And so it is under that. You do certainly. Our team does feel responsibility, and it is, as I mentioned before. Many folks know. Many of us have worked together for 20 and 30 years of that team. A big chunk of that group has been together a long time. So it is really. You would talk about work family. It's certainly that. And I'm going to go back maybe to the closing of the lobbies. One thing that we were in good position for was that our drive-throughs. We have such extensive drive-through facilities here in Stillwater at 3rd and Main, and then at Sanger and 19th. So our folks were able to move from the lobbies into those drive-through positions and open all those up. and be able to service folks very, very well. We've joked several times about closing loans in parking lots now, kind of like car hops, if you will. I've had experiences of closing loans in odd spots like emergency rooms or waiting rooms or those type of things, but a lot more closings happen like a sonic car hop right now. That's kind of what we're doing.
You mentioned the blessings in disguise. Part of what comes out of this, are we going to learn that some of the shortcuts maybe that you're forced to make right now might be good to have permanent?
Yeah, well, we're both Andy Griffith fans, and we like the slowing down of life is what Andy Griffith is kind of all about. But I've talked several times. I would love to fast forward 6 months and see how this thing turns out. I really would. But the journey is part of the fun too, and the experience, I should say, and building character and be able to work through a challenging time will make us all better. But it is going to be interesting to see what that new normal looks like.
And because some of these things will stick that we do say, hey, that wasn't a bad idea. Yeah. Whether it's how you bank or how you do this job or whatever it is, there'll be some things that we take out and go, that'd be nice to keep that in place.
Yeah.
Same with schools,
When I walked in this morning, it was almost second nature now after 50 years of walking up to somebody and shaking their hand and patting them on the back to do the little 6-foot bubble thing around you to kind of veer. So will some of that stick with us going forward? There'll be a little bit of that distancing thing.
Sometimes it just lasts a little bit. Sometimes after it's sort of like, unfortunately, when you have a tragedy, we've had our share, more than our share. For instance, the Bedlam rivalry for a little bit. During those times, they've been our best friend. I mean, they've come here and vice versa. When they've had time, we reach out to the other, and you go, maybe this will change. And then 3 weeks later, when you play, and that's good that the rivalry is still there. But maybe it's more like beating your brother-in-law or something like that. I mean, maybe it is more family, but I think some of them will stick.
In business, banks are tough competitors, but a lot of communication going on right now. And we're going to talk about the stimulus package here in a few minutes probably, but there's opportunities for banks to be involved with that. And it feels like there's going to be so much. It's a collaborative effort. Let's to make sure that the market gets its fair share here and how this gets distributed. So you feel a little bit of that, too, out there in the market at tough times.
When you're in your world, it's very personal. It's financial, and that is the heart and soul. And everybody has to have their share, right?
Somewhere.
Do you have people panicking right now?
You're right. We take it so
anxious,
so seriously because kind of next to health and maybe spiritual. I mean, the financial side is personal and critical and important, and decisions matter and strategy matters, that type of thing. But it doesn't feel like panic. It doesn't. It feels like communication is important. It feels like the FDIC insurance is in place, and making sure that everybody's protected in that regard is certainly on people's mind. But it doesn't feel panic at all. And that's we're waiting to see what that new normal looks like, I think.
How many of these things are in place because of the crash in '29?
Yes.
Is that what made all these things possible?
It is. As far as the FDIC insurance is concerned, of course, that's been increased over the years. But in my career, it was the '08 recession, and what that meant for regulators and how that impacted banks and their capital position. I talked a little bit about that a week ago Friday, but banks are in a much better position today than they would have been, 12 years ago, leading into the recession. There was a lot more risk taking then, and less cash capital's cash, so a lot less cash that banks had that they were sitting on to withstand a storm. So certainly coming out of the recession, we're in much better position.
You don't have to do although it was based, I guess, after that, but It's a Wonderful Life, where they have to run the bank and everybody has to load up the fish jar.
Never forget that one, where they had a few dollars at the end of the day.
Right. And times have changed so much, but that still is a concern whether you're doing it for your grandkids or for what you need now. What about this stimulus package? Because that's something that most of us don't really understand.
A lot of our minds, anyway. It's on the media, and in the media quite a bit, as most folks know. That $2.2 trillion stimulus package was passed last Thursday by Congress and signed by the president on Friday. And so now the work begins to understanding what that package is all about. The specific piece that impacts small business and local banks is a $350 billion package that's called the Payroll Protection Package. And so what it's set aside for are for businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19, the coronavirus. The money set aside to reimburse, actually a loan to grant, meaning you're able to borrow 2.5 times what your monthly payroll is. So if you had a $100,000 monthly payroll, 2.5 times that would be a $250,000 loan. And there's portions of that could be forgiven over time if you retain those employees. So obviously the goal is to make sure that small business who want to retain their employees are retaining those employees, because when we come out of this thing, we're going to want to hit the floor running. So kind of an effort to keep small business, to incent small business to keep those employees in place. So what's happening now, though, certainly dealing with a lot of clients and communicating as much as we can. But I kind of equate it to Affordable Care Act that came out, 10 years ago or so. That took about 2 or 3 months for that to, once it was passed, to be able to be determined what that meant by the healthcare industry and be able to actually be implemented. Right now, the $350 billion I mentioned for the payroll protection package is being administered by the SBA, Small Business Administration, and so at this point in time, they're determining what it means and how it gets dispersed, and those guidelines haven't come out yet. So to say it in a short phrase, we're in a holding pattern or a waiting game right now until we do know in fact what that means, and so we are getting ourselves in position best we can for when that word comes down. We're hoping days and not weeks. We're hoping sometime in early April we know what that package means. We're able to take applications and move on that. But it's on a lot of small businesses' mind, as you might imagine.
Kevin,
right now.
if say some of the people that are at Simmons Bank that you deal with, it is complicated. I had a guy in last week, and we kind of talked about this on the air, I think. But he's listed as essential, but it's kind of outside of what he does normally. They provide a necessary service, so they're essential. But what he was trying to dissect all this and figure it out, and he's afraid, okay, if somebody came in for this particular service that he offered, and he sells a product, but they see a product they want, can he sell it to them? Because the way he understood the rule is if they're completely closed down, follow all those guidelines, then they can they'll get payroll taken care of, and they'll be able to meet those needs. And he didn't want to make a mistake. He didn't want to trip up.
Right.
Who can they ask about those things?
Well, that's the kind of thing that's been trying to be determined at this point in time. The guidance we have given is, make a 30-day, 60-day plan as if the payroll protection package was not available. So you've got to run your business. You've got to do what you're doing. Who knows how that really looks when it comes down, or how fast that money gets taken or gets distributed, I guess I should say. So the guidance is you got to run your business like you need to run your business for sure, but certainly be talking to your banker so that you can get best in position whenever that defining moment comes, and it's going to come, and we need to be in position so that we can help small business.
So you guys need to hear from those people if they have questions, then, right?
We are hearing from them, and we need to continue to hear from them. We've certainly tried.
That question I just asked make any sense at all?
It did.
You've heard that before.
To me, it's what do small business do right now with the looming payroll protection plan out there, and the answer is you've got to run your business, with what makes sense to you and what your instincts state. You can't depend on it, but it's certainly something that's coming, and we need to be prepared for.
Yeah. Let me get a top of the hour break in here, and then we'll dive back into some of that stuff. Some of it's fairly complicated, but also there are positives, aren't there?
Absolutely.
So.